Well, good morning, gentlemen. Today we're going to talk about social advancement. Basically, social advancement is what about who is doing what for who, and it's always in flux. What have you done for me today or lately? We've all heard that before. And social and survival asset distribution is what really it comes down to, how it gets distributed. Now, hypergamy needs manna from heaven. They need a point of access from which they can get things on a regular basis, and they don't have to really do much for it because, well, they're disabled on a regular basis. They have to raise children, so on and so forth. So they've naturally come to expect that point of provision and access to be available. And the dominant side, well, they need to provide that manna from heaven on a regular basis. And if it's not there, they get all upset and start trying to produce more. That's just basically what it amounts to. That's just in their nature. Now, when you got a point of access and all you want is to have that point of access filled all the time, you naturally sort of get a dependency, and you like beta orbiters and people to do things for you, and ultimately even slaves. So that's how that works on that side. Now, on the dominant side, however, when you see that point of access start to diminish and there's a little scarcity coming in there, that encourages you to do more production, to do more cooperation, to provide and protect at that point of access better than you had before. And there's there's a lot of shit testing and shaming and stuff that goes on to keep that done. But basically, like I say, hypergamy comes from a mindset of scarcity because they see diminishing resources and assets constantly, or diminishing capacity to protect. Whereas the dominants on that side, they see unlimited potential. They're out there looking at stuff, solving problems. To them, there's always a solution. They're always doing that. They're always thinking about that. They don't need slaves and stuff. They need cooperation to get things done. And that's just basically how they work. They operate on a mindset of plenty. In other words, that there's an infinite amount of resources out there. They just got to go find them, find the solution for it. On the other hand, an invasion of a scarcity mindset into a plenty mindset, well, like I said just a minute ago, that engenders a need for production. An invasion of a plenty mindset into a scarcity mindset engenders a feeling of satisfaction. They'll start having less stress, so on and so forth. That's just the way that works. Now, when supply becomes too great, an attitude of disposability starts to emerge. Your problem is no longer whether or not your supply is sufficient. Your problem now becomes what to throw away and what to keep. And you start to get a mindset of disposability. And if your supply point of access can always be increased simply by, say, disposing of one producer in favor of another who produces more, well, that becomes a natural and normal course of thinking. Now, the problem with that is your distribution becomes, and your attitude towards it starts to have more influence than the actual production. This can be a big problem because now you're starting to have inappropriate roles. You're got two mindsets invading each other. You get a degeneration of those roles. And all of a sudden you've got inappropriate distribution. And with inappropriate distribution, of course, you start having people who need more, and because it's been inappropriately distributed, you have to produce more in order to provide for those needs. And it's kind of a vicious circle. It's where gynocentric systems come in. It's why people are constantly trying to get something for nothing, that sort of thing. Anyway, enough about that. Now, when we're discussing all of this, basically what happens is that when you've got the dominance starts to need to produce more and more, they need to effectively create extreme statism. Now, gynocentrism can't exist without extreme statism because you've got that mindset of plenty and that mindset of scarcity. What happens is, as the mindset of plenty comes in and the women are satisfied, the satisfaction turns into a want for more and more. And when you've got a civilization that's producing a great deal of excess assets, then what you have is the assets they need to actually start creating gynocentric systems in a big way. And that's what that comes down to. Now, that redistribution and all, it accelerates the need for more production, and it just constantly keeps growing. The extreme gynocentric systems are basically there as an attempt to manage and supply an ever-increasing demand for protection and provision. And that's just what it eventually comes down to. Now, once the roles start to degenerate between the two, because that's what happens in a gynocentric system, the roles begin to degenerate and they begin to get mixed. And all of a sudden, you've got inappropriately distributed roles, you've got inappropriately distributed assets, and of course, well, you've got the expectation that everything's just going to keep going the way it went because it's all been going so well. And it's just a constant degeneration with people believing that it's not going to degenerate. It just happens that way over time. And socially, and this, of course, is with the social and with the asset production and the social. And with the social part, what you get is exchanges of authority. You start putting authority in inappropriate places, and at some point, people lose enough authority. They're functionally wage slaves, tax cows, beta orbiters, this, that, and the other thing, and they begin to get dissatisfied. The juice becomes not worth the squeeze, and of course, at that point, you've really got a problem. Now, with this plays right into survival and reproduction and hope. The reason for that is that when you start to have an inappropriate supply, and you've got a descending spiral of cost versus benefit, well, eventually the cost exceeds the benefit, and people just decide juice ain't worth the squeeze. You start having a lot of problems at that point. Take, for instance, the grass eaters in Japan, most of the guys here in family court, things of that nature. You've got all kinds of things going wrong, and people are being raised with such a confusion in these roles and such an inefficient and inappropriate use of the assets that it's almost impossible to make it right. It's been tried many times over history, and we'll get more into that, as well as the law of plenty and quite a few other things. But I think that's probably about enough for today. We already know that extreme states are what dominance creates, and gynocentrism simply can't exist without it. So it's kind of a back and forth. But anyway, one of the things you need to remember really about all of this is that it's not about getting mad at anybody for anything. These are natural and normal emergent behaviors. What you have to do is manage the basic behaviors in such a way that you don't get all of this inappropriate use and distribution of assets, social power, and so on and so forth, authority, all of the rest of that. Anyway, we'll get into more of that very shortly. We'll start talking about conflict resolution and how that plays into it and a few other things. But until then, you guys all have a good day. Go get yourself something to eat and relax and chew on this for a while. You all have a good day.